Welcome back. Joining us in studio right now, we have former state rep John Stefanski. Thanks for being back.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So we're tackling a lot of things that's happening in the legislative session, and one of the things was the redistricting map, and we just got a ruling from the Supreme Court on Wednesday.
Yep.
So what does this mean for our friends at home?
So this has been a long process. This has been honestly, probably a 4-year process to get us where we are today. But basically, what happened Wednesday is there was an appeal made to the Supreme Court to stop another court from doing what they wanted to do. So a lower court said that the map that was just passed in January, which redrew our congressional districts, violated the Constitution.
Okay.
The Supreme Court came in on Wednesday and said, while we consider what to do with that ruling, because an appeal was made, we're going to issue a stay. And the effect of the stay is that basically Louisiana can go forward with our next election for these congressional elections, which happens in November, with the map that was passed in January, which created the 2 majority-minority districts in Louisiana.
Okay, and so what happens after this election cycle?
Yeah, so after this, so what'll happen is we'll have this next election. The congressman will be elected based on this map that passed, and then the Supreme Court will decide whether or not they want to take up this case. They may take up the case, they may render a decision that changes all the law for the entire country based on redistricting, or they may decide they don't want to take it up.
Yeah.
They may just simply decide, no, we're not going to take this up, and what happens then is you shift back to the last court decision, which was a federal district court that said this map violated the Constitution. So if this map violates the Constitution, you would have to redraw it again.
Okay, so I was going to ask, would that just repeat this cycle?
Yes.
Okay.
It feels like it's never going to
Yeah.
end. But what is so hard for, I think, the casual person to understand is there are so many legalities involved in this. There's been so many court decisions. There's so many federal laws involved with redistricting. And then you throw in the element of politics.
Yeah.
And it is just incredibly difficult to draw these maps that checks the political boxes as well as threads the needle on the legalities.
Yeah, and so for the Supreme Court, how long does that process take for them to decide on if they are going to look at this again? Yeah,
so typically, they issue their rulings, about once a year. It actually comes around usually mid-June. I would say they issue their big rulings. That's where you heard the Roe versus Wade thing a couple of years ago. It's really on their own timeline. I would expect within the next couple months we'll hear whether or not they're going to take up the case on appeal. And if they take it on appeal, everybody goes to the Supreme Court, they hear oral arguments, and then the court takes it under advisement and eventually renders a decision, like I said, that usually comes out about once a year.
Okay, and so before they had issued their decision on Wednesday, there was a decision that needed to be made on Monday, and I kind of asked you what that meant. Can we just talk about that for our friends at home?
Sure. So the reason time was such in play here is the Supreme Court, basically the Secretary of State, Nancy Landry, said that we have to have a decision and a map by May the 15th. If we don't have a map by the 15th, it jeopardizes our election cycle because they have to do so many things in order to draw these districts all across the state so that when you go vote, the person who the district that you're in and where you're registered, you're voting for the right people. So May the 15th was a huge date because we needed to know what map to proceed with in order to have these elections.
It was a quick turnaround time.
It was a really quick turnaround time, and then we were tasked with potentially the court was asking Louisiana to draw another map, and they gave us I think till June the 5th to do that. And so you had all of these different competing interests thrown in, and the Supreme Court basically came in and said, no, there's not enough time for all of that. We're just going to let you go ahead and have this election with the map that was passed in January, and then we'll make a decision on whether or not we feel it violates the Constitution, or we won't. We may just send it back.
And then that process could restart all again. And if people at home want to stay up to date on what's happening in their legislature, where can they go?
Yeah, so I always encourage everybody, legis.la.gov is the website for the legislature. You can find a lot of information here. I will tell you, for this complicated redistricting stuff, some of the national media has written some really, really well-written articles about the timeline and everything.
Yeah.
But for Louisiana news and for Louisiana legislature, legis.la.gov.
Thank you so much for breaking this down for us today.
Happy to be here, yep.
Of course, and let's go ahead and check in with Storm Track 15 meteorologist Adam Olivier. What are you tracking, Adam?